So you're all the way at the end. There we go. They already turned the mics on.
All right, thank you all for coming. You really didn't have to applause for the shoes. You really didn't have to clap for the shoes, really.
PlayStation 2.
Again, thank you all for coming. I apologize for the late start. We just had a few technical difficulties. But what we're going to do is I'm going to have each of these amazing creative talents here just kind of introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are, what they do. And then we're going to go right into looking at some secret archived footage of what these games might have been before they became what they are. I think that's going to be really fun for all of us to check out. So why don't we start with Dylan here?
All right.
And just go right down the line, say who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. Do I stand up for it, or do you sit down?
Just sit down and relax.
Yeah, it's very easy to relax in front of all these people. So I'm Dylan Cuthbert, and I've been making games for a long time, like from 1989, I think. And I'm based in Kyoto, Japan, running a studio called Q Games. And today I'm here to talk about some of the art, or the early art behind the Pixel Junk series.
Yep.
So.
Hi, I'm Lisa Black. I'm a producer at Media Molecule. I've been there for about 6.5 years. In-game text is my big thing, really. So if you play our Tearaway demo today, you'll see some of my words in there.
Okay, hi, I'm Jan Bart van Beek. I'm the studio art director at Guerrilla Games, where I've been for almost 16 years now. And I've worked on every single Killzone game that we've ever made.
Fantastic. I'm Cory Barlog, and I apparently have a very big mouth. And I am working, I worked on the God of War series, Sony Santa Monica.
Hi, I'm Neil Druckmann. I work at Naughty Dog, creative director. I worked on The Last of Us, and now I'm working on Uncharted 4, Thief's End.
All right, with that, I actually think we're going to leave a lot of time at the end of this for Q&A. The last panel we did, we only left 15 minutes, and it wasn't nearly enough time. So we're going to try to leave about a half an hour for Q&A. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to start with Neil. Dave Alonso, where are you? I have no idea where he is. Okay, can you run the animatic? So Neil, do you want to set this up really quick?
Yeah, so when we started work on The Last of Us, very early on, Bruce Straley and I saw No Country for Old Men, and in some of those shootouts, it had such a tension to it, such a cool feel, that we wanted to see if we could capture it with an animatic. So this animatic was put together pretty quickly, and you'll see it's very rough, black and white models, but it was just trying to capture the tone of what the gameplay for The Last of Us might be like. It has like 30 seconds with just audio, so just watch it.
you want to talk a little bit about what that led to?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about wanting to make every fight feel desperate, almost like when you run into human antagonism, it should feel like a boss fight. And how do we make guys feel like they're coordinating with one another? And that was the first kind of piece that we created that was really inspirational to the team. And throughout production, when we were playing all these different setups we had in the game, we would pull this up and be like, are we getting this kind of feel? In the melee, are we getting this kind of brutality? So this is not gameplay, this is just pure animation, but this became a milestone for us. It's like, can we hit the feel of this animatic?
Cool, thank you. Cory has provided us with some very early concept stages of what Kratos might have looked like. So can we pop a couple of those up on the screen, Dave? The Kratos shots?
So yeah, the early stuff actually predates when I even got on the team, when Jaffe was coming up with kind of the early ideas for Kratos. And at one point he had a dog, and at one point I think he even had a kid on his back in some of the drawings, but they were doing sketches. This was sort of the closest to final versions of Kratos that we ended up with. But you can see they still had the blue tattoo. This is before, I think, the TGS build in 2003 when we changed the color. And there's the Lone Wolf and Kratos sort of stage when it was kind of giving Kratos a bit more of the human side by having him carry a baby with him at all times. So it underwent quite a metamorphosis. I think it was many, many years really trying to figure out what this guy was going to look like. Cool. Really anchoring on that idea of finding Clash of the Titans meets Heavy Metal Magazine.
Do you want to run one of the videos too? Yeah?
Sure. Some of these are some early previs. So these were when we started on 2. We wanted to try to see how far we could take the chain blades, using them for various kinds of navigation. Because pushing blocks was just so God of War 1. We wanted to pull blocks with chain blades. So next gen. But there was lots of really neat ideas. I think this was some of the tamer. We went really crazy with it.
Cool. All right, thanks, Cory.
Right on.
Jan, I think, did you want to talk over this video?
Yeah, let me just first introduce it. So,
Okay.
When we started making Killzone, the first thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to make a franchise where we focus a little more on the bad guys. We were really heavily inspired by things like Aliens, which is really about the alien, as well as Terminator, which is really about the Terminator. So that's not as much focusing on the good guys and the heroes, but really making the enemies very iconic. So, and of course, maybe the main thing about Killzone and its enemies are, and cue video, the red eyes. So this is some of the really early concept design basically that we had. Basically really starting off basically from scratch. So basically this is quite amateuristic, I would say, basically by current standards. Of course, basically our concept art really progressed over time and basically became more narrative inspired and ultimately become actually sort of almost high art basically in its later stages. But this decision, basically this really early idea basically to give the Helga's red eyes became really important basically for the whole IP. It became our cover art basically. There's not a single cover art basically that doesn't feature the red eyes. And also basically you constantly see them in gameplay like this. So the red eyes basically have become almost this sort of element in the scene where people focus on when they're playing the game. Even to the extent basically when at some point basically the designers were asking to put red lights on doors that you couldn't open, it completely didn't work because everybody started shooting at the doors. Also in multiplayer, for example, the red eyes actually gave a big advantage to the ISA team because basically all the enemies basically stood out in the dark. So while the first Killzone didn't have blue eyes for the ISAs, basically we needed to add that in the later stage as well. So it's interesting to see basically how a very small design decision that was actually more of an art directional choice actually influenced the gameplay over time to a great deal. And as you can see, basically the other thing that's really important, basically that, and this you might notice, every single screenshot of a Helgas that you will ever see in marketing art always has these guys running at you. And basically that has become so iconic about them as well, basically this sort of threatening, imposing figure basically coming towards the player. So yeah, that's a little bit about the history of the Helgas characters.
Very cool. Thank you. Lucy.
Okay, I just want to tell you a story about the pitch that the guys made to Philip Harrison. They didn't.
We don't know
really-
who Phil Harrison is anymore. We have no idea who that is.
He was an important dude, okay? This was Alex, Mark, Dave, and our business guy, Chris Lee, at the time. They didn't really have a game to pitch. They just had themselves, their reputation, and they had a little physics demo thing that Dave had been working on called Flat World. So what they did was they basically took his Flat World, and they took CV elements and video clips and stuff like that, and made a kind of portfolio presentation that turned into a playable demo. So if you run it now, we'll take a quick look at it. It's been shown quite a few times before. Everybody knows this as, this is our little indent. Oh, we've lost it. Here we go. So everybody knows this is Yellowhead, yeah? So you can't see the presentation side of that there. That's all around the edges. But basically, they're watching this presentation, and then it turns into this playable demo. And they sat and played this. But the nuttiest thing that the guys did was Alex put a drum machine in there. Because they knew that they wanted to do cooperative gaming. They knew they wanted to do creative gaming. They wanted to put that together. They didn't know how that was going to work, really. But Alex went completely nuts making a drum machine for the game. Photographed textures for knobs and sliders and things. Really went to town on it. And then handed Phil the pad and said, okay, there's no plan at all here. Let's try some creative gaming, yeah? Alex started, and he started making patterns and things. Phil could see what he was doing, and he joined in with snare drums and stuff like that, and they just jammed for 5 minutes. And so it was like cooperative create before anybody really knew what that was, before they knew how they were going to do that in the game.
Thank you, Luce. That's such a great story to me. I mean, just seeing what we just saw and realizing that that turned into LittleBigPlanet, just amazing. I love that story. Thank you. So now we have Dylan.
Yes.
And as you guys know, Dylan responsible for that whole Pixel Junk series. Lots of great, very diverse lineup of great games, and I think we have a few.
Yeah, I'll talk
static
about
shots.
a bit first about the why I created Pixel Junk.
Great.
So when I was learning programming as a kid, it was the 8-bit era, and I made lots of 2D games at home, and I really wanted to make 2D games. And then when I joined the industry, the first games I started working on were 3D games. So I was like suddenly thrown into 3D, and I started doing 3D, and I really enjoyed that as well. But when I got the PS3, or the early sort of prototypes of the PS3 or whatever, the thing that most inspired me about the PS3 was that it had an HDMI port. And the thing about that HDMI port meant that I could get true colors and true pixels. You could look at the screen, you could see the pixels, and that made me think, wait a minute, I could actually go back and make 2D games again, but in this newer medium, like in a medium where you can actually get the colors reproduced. So you're designing the game, you're looking at the colors, and the people who play the game at home can see the exact same colors you put into the game, which up until that point, people now don't remember it, but it was all over the place.
Yeah.
If you had red in your game, it could be orange at someone's house, because it really was just all over the place. It was a little bit better in the UK where we had PAL, but all the NTSC territories just had this sliding color mismatch. And so what I did, and I looked at the HDMI spec, and I thought, wow, I can do 1080p. So what can I do with this? So I took old 8-bit games, and I basically tiled them to see how many screens of like a Sinclair Spectrum game, a sort of an 8-bit computer game, would fit on this HDMI screen. And I fit like 17 on them, and you could see all the pixels still. So you could still, and so I took like old screenshots of like Spy versus Spy, and stuff like that, and I just tiled them, and it just looked so amazing and so detailed that I thought, okay, I'm going to make an entire game series based on this. And so that's where basically the HD comes from in the Pixel Junk logo. So if you look at the Pixel Junk logo, right in the center, there's HD written in the logo there. And so then what I did is I went to the artists and the game designers and everybody at Q Games, and I said, everybody, design a screen for a game that you'd imagine would be fun or enjoyable to look at or whatever, without actually thinking too much about the game in depth. Just as a 2D game, what would you want to see on the screen? And these are slides from those sort of brainstorming sessions. And then we looked at these screens, and that's what we extrapolated from to make the games. So we kind of made these like one shots, and we cut them out into like glossy printed like 16:9 slides. And I took this like big batch of these slides, basically the ones you're seeing now, and I went to Alan Becker, who was running Santa Monica Studios, and we were in a little cafe near GDC, and I said, these are the games I want to make. And I just went, and I just showed him all these screenshots. I didn't have there was no code written or anything. It was just, this is what I want to make. And it was just these really nice glossy slides, and everything went forward from there.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit also about, I'm sure a lot of you had a chance to see the Tomorrow Children out there. Can you talk about the kind of the transition from that process to something that's very different in Tomorrow Children? Okay,
so when we were doing Pixel Junk, I was always considering like doing another 3D game, but I wanted to find something special, something that's a bit different to the current trend of 3D games. And I was looking for years and years, and people were always asking us, what's happening? Where is Pixel Junk Series 2? Because I always said it was going to be 3D, but I always said I was going to try and find something special for it. It didn't end up being a Pixel Junk title because the title got too big, and so we said, we're partnering with Sony Studios Japan to make it, and we discovered with the PS4 when we were looking through the specs for it, especially on the graphics side, we realized that maybe we could use some techniques that haven't really been used before, but you can find in CGraph, in those kind of technical places, but we thought, well, what if we try and use these and create a different 3D look? And that's what we did. And we've created sort of a different way of lighting the game, and I think it really shows in the visuals. And then on top of that, because the PS4 was all based on share and that kind of stuff, I thought, well, sharing, what is that? What does that mean? And it suddenly clicked to me, well, wait a minute, sort of Marxist, sort of communism, that's all about sharing, right? And so I took that, and I thought, well, I'm going to make this into a game somehow. And then we just kind of pushed it all together, and it became the Tomorrow Children.
That's great. I love hearing the origin stories of games. I think it's amazing. So everyone's had a little bit of a chance to talk, and I know it doesn't seem like we've said much, but there's about half an hour left, and I really want to allow a lot of time for Q&A. So if you guys want to go ahead and start lining up at the mic, this is your chance to talk to all these wonderful creatives up here. And last time, like I said, at last panel, 15 minutes wasn't nearly enough, so we're going to start firing away. So why don't you go ahead with your first question?
Yeah, my question's for Neil. The Last of Us, like usually a game like that isn't a publisher doesn't allow for them to be made so late in a console cycle. And now that it's so popular, I wonder how much pull you have on what you're allowed to make next and how much Sony has a say in that.
Sony has been really kind to us, and I guess we feel really lucky at Naughty Dog is that they leave that up to us, the creative decisions of what game we want to work on. So, you know, The Last of Us started as a sequel to Jak and Daxter, and we felt like we couldn't find the right combination of story and gameplay to make that work. And we had the freedom to pitch a whole new IP. So all the pressure comes from internal within the studio of what is the team jazzed about, what are they excited to work on, and that's kind of like where we'll guide the studio.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
My question's for the whole panel. Neil mentioned earlier, like No Country for Old Men was one of the big inspirations for The Last of Us. So I was wondering what other inspirations for your guys' games. Like again, when I was playing Last of Us, I really thought of Cormac McCarthy's The Road when I was playing it. And so is that one of the inspirations behind it?
When I was working on it too, in fact, anything I'm working on, I tend to really fall back to a never-ending story. I freaking love that movie. So many fantastic things about that kind of imagination on the screen, you know, like pure unadulterated imagination. The idea of going on an adventure, so.
I think for Killzone, basically, there's always been an element of Starship Troopers in there. Basically, this slightly dystopian world, basically, that also has a little bit of a political commentary in it. I think that's a big one for us, at least.
With Media Molecule, it's all creativity. It's all that everybody at Media Molecule does something creative outside of their time there. And that's the inspiration for everything that we do. Everything that we do is about just wanting to make things, you know.
For Pixel Junk, it was obviously all the 8-bit era games, and I wanted to recreate them in a sort of HD field. But for the Tomorrow Children, the prime material that I always refer to is an old TV series from the 60s called The Prisoner. And it has like a bit of a cult following even in America, but in Britain it's pretty huge. But that was like, I really wanted to get that sort of 60s Cold War sort of thriller kind of feeling to the game, even if the game wasn't going to be, you know, a thriller kind of game. But I wanted to get that sort of atmosphere.
Okay, I want to play it even more now.
Cool. Thank you.
My question is for Dylan. I'm curious because your video game development situation is a little different, whereas Guerrilla Games creates Killzone 1, 2, 3 Shadowfall, and then God of War is God of War 1, 2, 3 Ascension,
right,
and maybe even another one for PS4, I hear. So my question is, how hard is it to jump from genre to genre, from a racing game to a tower defense game to shooter to whatever you categorize Pixel Junk Eden as?
I think that's, for me, that's what being a game developer is actually all about. I mean, for bigger titles, it gets very hard to kind of diversify, you know, to try different things, because for every project, it's going to take like years to make. But I still want to try, even though we've spent years making the Tomorrow Children, for example, I still want to make sure I don't get caught in the cycle of making sort of the same game, again. And I want to create as many different types of genres and games as I can.
Cool. Thank you.
So this question is primarily for Neil, but can go out to the whole panel. You mentioned a couple questions before me that Last of Us was originally going to be a Jak and Daxter sequel. I just was wondering how common is that you start out like working on an old IP and it evolves into something as drastically different as Jak and Daxter to Last of Us.
For us, that was a first. I don't know how common it is for other studios, but I know no matter what project we work on, it usually starts, we think of it's going to be this one thing, and pretty quickly it evolves into something else as you're getting gameplay on the stick and you're feeling it out, and things that don't work fall away, and the game slowly takes its shape.
Nothing ever turns out how you want it in the beginning. It's a totally different thing in the beginning. And then you look back on it and go, what happened? Usually it's a better thing though, right?
Yeah.
I can answer that one. Tearaway went through so many stages, because we were developing it alongside the hardware, and we were contributing as well to the hardware. If you've seen and Rex can show you his making of stuff. He's doing some making of stuff, but if you'd seen Tearaway in the beginning to what it is now, it's just, it bears no relation whatsoever, nothing.
Started out as Rip Away.
Over here.
I just recently watched a lecture at NYU by BioWare, and it mentioned was that sometimes devs fall in love with certain concepts in their games that ultimately don't make it into the final product. So I was just wondering, for the entire panel, are there any notable concepts that you guys might have fallen in love with that didn't make it into one of your bigger games?
I can have one. In the Tomorrow Children, there was a sort of glowing stick that the main character had for quite a while, and we really loved it. We kind of used it, but it became a bit sort of Harry Potter-ish towards the end. So at the end, we decided to get rid of it. But we did, while it was in development, we really loved that feature. But maybe in a future game, it'll, these kind of things, they do reappear, in later creations, in later games. So maybe it'll make a reappearance.
In The Last of Us, there was going to be a dog that Ellie kind of adopted and was with you, and we had all this cool concept art, but didn't have time for one more feature.
We had lots of little bits and pieces that came out of, one of our processes is game jamming, where everybody will get together, we'll give them an umbrella theme to go under, and they all explore their own little pieces of gameplay. So we've had things like, we had this guy Omar, who smiles at absolutely everybody all the time. And he made this thing with the face recognition software that would, if you smiled, a door would open, and it was the only way you could open the door. And that eventually became the face in the sun,
So cool.
And Omar used to work at few games.
Did he?
Over here.
Thank you. Hey guys. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you, because I'm actually here with my brother, and on behalf of him and I, we have poured hours into games that all 5 of you guys have made. So thank you so much for all those, and you too, Scott. So my question is, in the spirit of developers announcing games that they probably shouldn't have today, I was wondering if Jan wanted to comment on a little game called Horizon yet.
Absolutely not.
Not going to happen. Nice try,
All right,
though.
that's it.
That was clever. I like that. It was all thankful and nice lead-in. It was great. I like it. Over here.
Have you seen his shoes?
Shoes.
This question is mostly for Neil, but anyone could answer it. It's with The Last of Us. It was probably one of the greatest games I've ever played in my life, and I wanted to know how you guys started from that. Like, how long ago did you start the game? Like, how long ago? Like, during Jack and Daxter, it seems. And then also, like, a lot of the inspirations and all the, I don't know, like, all the real human elements to it. Like, even killing a clicker was tough, because you're like, wow, that person's fighting for humanity even though he's just infected. And I loved it. It was amazing. And also, if we might see maybe a Crash Bandicoot or Jack and Daxter in the near future.
I'm here to announce a new Crash Bandicoot.
Yes! Yes!
Sorry,
I can't. It's Activision. We don't even own it.
What was the question? When did we start The Last of Us? We had finished Uncharted 2, and our bosses, Evan Wells and Christoph Balestra, decided it was a good time to try to split Naughty Dog into 2 projects, so we could better leverage our tech and give more opportunities to people to kind of take different roles within the company. And they put Bruce Straley and I on what was it, Jack and Daxter sequel, reboot, whatever it was going to be. And well, for a while we just burnt out on Uncharted 2, so we didn't do much. We worked on a GDC talk, I think, for 3 months. And then there was a couple more months where we worked on this Jack and Daxter thing, and that didn't work. And then we just kind of like opened a door. Like we said, do we even want to do a story-based game? And we talked about multiplayer games, or do we want to try our hand at first person versus third person? It just really helped us discover Naughty Dog's strength and what we wanted to do. And I would say within 6 months of finishing Uncharted 2, we were on to The Last of Us.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, my name is Terrell Martin. I go to the Art Institute in Los Angeles, and I'm close to graduating. And my question is, for people who are about to graduate, or those people who just want to try to enter the video game industry, what advice do you have for them?
Don't get in the video game industry? I wish I had a seriously follow-up to that, but I don't. Someone else should answer.
And you just keep creating stuff.
Yeah.
Make stuff, basically. Because your CV is just a piece of paper. And you can write anything on that. What you need to turn up with is things that people can play with or look at that, you know, is going to inspire them, is going to make them realize that this is, you live and breathe this, and you want to do this all the time.
All right, thank you.
And look for any job at a game company as well. Like, any job can get you in there and closer to showing people, hey, this is what I can do.
Actually, I do have my portfolio with me.
Neil?
If maybe after the conference or the panel, maybe like 5 minutes of your time would be amazing.
Okay, he will totally do that.
Go to Scott. He oversees all the studios.
That's
so
true.
That's
the guy. Have you seen his shoes?
But seriously, what I was going to say is, you know, you got to scour the internet, Gama Sutra, things like that. Find the internships. Internships lead to full-time positions so often.
Yeah.
And the other thing I can just say, and I know everyone up here will agree, keep following your passion. I think all of us are ridiculously lucky to be working in this industry. For me, it's the only industry I've ever worked in besides my stupid college jobs at video stores. But it is, when I finished school, I had an opportunity as a database engineer for a railroad company. Yes, I'm old. And, or I could become a game tester at Sega. And it was half the salary to take the game tester job. And it was no question. You had to follow that passion, and I've been in this industry ever since. So just keep following it, and eventually, when you're doing what you love, something great will come of it.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a lovely answer.
My question is, how do you get to developing your own games or being a part, like having a say in the development team